Welcome to iOS application development. In today's class, we will be seeing about what are the basic structure of an iOS. That is, the agenda of today's class will be introduction to iOS application development, seeing what are the architecture inside an iOS, what are the design patterns being followed inside an iOS application development, what are the frameworks which are used for iOS application development, and the application life cycle of an iOS application. Introduction to iOS. This is a very simple thing. That is, it was known as iPhone OS before June 2010. But later, when they started using the same operating system for iPod Touch, iPad, and Apple TV, they termed it as iOS. Going into the architecture, iOS has four layers. One is Core OS, which is the basemost layer. Above that is Core Services. Above that is Media, and above that is Cocoa Touch. What is the difference between these four layers? Core Services is the basemost layer which handles all or most of the hardware related things. We need not memorize what all it handles at each and every layer. We just need to know that these are the four layers available. Say Core OS. In Core OS, OS X kernel, memory management, everything, power management, keychain access. Keychain access is something like saving your user ID passwords or something related to your Mac. The difference in these layers is, say if I am transferring some file from one location to another through a web service, or uploading or downloading some content. If I am in the media layer, say if I am in the media layer, I am having all the files differentiated as PNG, JPG, GIF, other video types, audio types, or whatever it is. But in the core OS layer, everything is a file for me. The layer, as it moves up and up, it is transformed or segregated or separated in a way that user finds it very easy. Instead of identifying the data he receives or he sends as packets of data and then confirming that it is a file of this format, the user has been given an framework or a library where he can differentiate the file directly by dot extensions. So going on with it, from the name itself, you can identify that Core OS, it takes care of the core capabilities. Core Services, it goes into address book sort of things, and Cocoa Touch is the topmost layer where all your touch definitions are identified. Going into detail about the architecture and the frameworks involved. There are two mandatory frameworks for any application development. One is called UIKit and other is called a foundation framework. One best thing with Apple is whatever naming conventions or the naming structures they have followed will be so good enough that from confirming or coming to a conclusion with the general meaning of the name, you can identify what it actually does or what that framework is actually doing. As the first framework which we say is mandatory is called as UI kit. What is UI? UI is user interface. So this framework takes care of whatever things in your application is concerned with the UI. That is, in your application, if you develop a screen having a button or a label or a text field where user can come and enter his data, those components are already created in this UI kit. You just need to drag and drop those components into your screen design. And the second framework is Foundation Framework, which is also a mandatory framework. From the name or from the meaning of the term foundation, what is it actually? It is the base. Foundation is the base for any architecture or anything which is built upon it. So whatever the data types you use, whatever the collections, what are the operating based system based services, everything is defined in this foundation framework. So without UI kit or foundation framework, you cannot have any sort of application development. And saying framework and framework again and again. What is this framework all about? What, what is the difference between a framework and a library? Say I am a developer. I have found out some new logic. Say I have a library called calculator. My library will have predefined methods written inside, like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. I will expose this library to a user. He will have few methods: get sum, get sub, get minus, get multiply, get divide, or whatever it is. The user will say, or I'll say to the user that you give me two numbers and call the method appropriately, I will give you a result. If you give two numbers 10 and 5 into this method addition, I'll give you the result as 15. You need not worry about how it is happening internally or what logic I have written internally. So why this frameworks or library is used is, these frameworks or library already have predefined logic written to create a button or an image or whatever application predefined activities need to be performed. You can use this libraries or framework and get those things done by just giving the appropriate input. You need not rewrite the logic all and whole again. So without these two frameworks, it is difficult to, not difficult, it is impossible to create an iPhone or an iOS application. What is the difference, actual difference between a library and a framework? Both does the same role of acting as a method where pre-written logic is there. I just call that method. So what is the difference actually? Why do you term it as a library and a framework? Inside a library, I can go and see the logic they have actually written. Inside a framework, I cannot do that. I can only see what are the methods available, what is the input I should give, and what is the output I will be getting. So framework is more of a bundled structure where you can make sure that whatever logic you have written is with you only, not you need not expose it to everyone. Design patterns. Various design patterns followed inside iOS programming are listed below. One is MVC controller, two is block objects, three is delegation, four is managed memory model, and five is threads and concurrent programming. We'll go into one by one. Model view controller. We'll drop it as of now because we'll be seeing it in detail in the coming slides. Block objects. What is block objects? Block objects is nothing but, say if I'm executing some data or something at a class or a method which is defined already. So I need to encapsulate, that is keep it as a method or some class at a different place, and I need to call this when and are needed. Delegation. Delegation is a way of getting things done. From general terms, getting things done. Take my touch event, delegate it internally. That is one way of delegation. Manage memory model. In iOS application development, we are not dealing with 80 GB, 200 GB, 300 GB systems. We are dealing with a mobile phone of 8, 16 or 32 GB mobile phone or devices. So in this case, we cannot afford to have the luxury of using our memory as and such we want. We have to be so precise in the usage of it. So in Objective-C, there was no virtual machine which controls the memory management as in our home systems. Our home systems had a Java virtual machine which was internally built up, which takes care of whatever memory allocated and deallocation. But here what we have to do is we have to allocate our memory, and whenever we don't want it, we have to take care of releasing the memory for other system usage. Threads and concurrent programming. What is this threads and concurrent programming is all about? Say, I'll give you a simple example for this. There is a bank. Person A gives a check to person B and C for 10,000 rupees. But his account has a balance of only 10,000 rupees. So what happens? Both of them go and process it at the same time. What happens is actually when both of them go and process it at the same time, there is 20,000 debit but only 10,000 credit into his account. There will be a minute second of gap between these two processes, say very small microseconds. These two processes enter into the database and hit the balance memory area. So the first process which hits the balance memory area will establish a lock over that process, and the other will be keep on waiting to get the value. Once this lock is released after all the process, then the second process, that is the B's debit, will be able to access the memory area. By that time, what would have happened is B gets no money because account is 0. There are many other things like the way you see it in a table view. In your application, there is only table view is limited only 10 rows. So what you can do is you have to show only data for these 10 rows. You cannot show data for 100 rows or 1000 rows at a time, and there is no meaning in getting all these data or fetching all these data for 100 or 1000 rows. You need only data of 10 rows to be shown to the user, because no matter if you have the data for 100 rows, user cannot see it all at a time. There is a way of concurrent programming in this, where the user sees data of 10 rows. When the user scrolls or stretches it, he can see the data of further rows as and when he scrolls. So 10 rows will be shown to him, and 10 rows will be loaded on scroll. Other data will not be loaded unless and until it is needed.